title of US CQM forecast alert on June 12, 2020 is Economic recovery heavily depends on improving personal consumption expenditure. These are the main economic indicators updated in this week's CQM and PCA forecast. The PPI for the final demand for goods jumped by 1.6%. As a result, the inventory valuation adjustment was revised downward significantly. This table shows the revisions in major components on the expenditure side by this week's CQM forecast. Inventory changes were adjusted downwards by about 75 billion, while almost half of it were offset by improved net exports. PPI of the final demand for goods jumped 1.6% in May, compared to a 1.7% decrease in ARIMA forecast last week. This drastically reduced the inventory valuation adjustment. Due to a big increase in PPI in May, inventory changes were revised downward significantly through the inventory valuation adjustment. After all, this week's CQM slightly revised down the economic growth on the expenditure side from minus 38.4% last week to minus 39.1%. The economic growth on the income side is forecasted to be minus 47.9%, almost the same as last week. The PCA forecast of economic growth rate was minus 27.4% for 2020 Q2, which was almost the same as the previous week. This is because the negative effect of April real inventories on economic growth were largely offset by the positive effect of April real net export and May real government spending. The reason why the economic growth rate in 2020 Q2 has dropped by about 40% is that personal consumption expenditure has decreased by more than 2,000 billion. Therefore, even if inventory changes or net export are revised by 100 billion, the impact on the current economic growth rate is insignificant. Of course, if the economic growth rate is normal at 2% to 3%, the impact of 100 billion revision is very influential. Conclusion from this week's US CQM forecast alert. First, the economic recovery from minus 40% growth must wait for the strong recovery of personal consumption expenditure. Secondly, an increase of 100 billion under normal economic growth rate of 2% to 3% will be a big influence, but now it is small enough to be ignored. This slide shows additional information about the original developer of CQM and theoretical papers.